Hello there, this is part 11 of our training series, making a tunnel swing in Blender 2.8, and just an introduction to Blender 2.8 in general. So we are left off with this, trying to create a material that has concrete and bricks exposed in one material. So yeah, we already created the concrete, we created the bricks, and now we just need to make a mask that will kind of show those different materials. So this I just did this just to demonstrate to you what we want. Maybe let me remove this material because this is going to be our final shader. So I'll name this appropriately. This is bricks. This is going to be concrete. This is bricks and concrete. This is our mask. So I'll call it that. So to create our mask, we just need a texture, an image texture. So I'll find one from my textures. Let me see. So a texture like this that has different patches with white and black is good enough. It's, I think, very good to use. So I can start with that, and if it doesn't work out to what I want, you can play around. We can switch it to another texture. So let's start with this. So if we preview this, you can see it's just a black and white material texture. But these look more like scratches instead of concrete patches or whatever you want to call them. So let me add a math node and change this to power to see the kind of, just to make those areas a bit, to have more contrast in the in the white and black areas, and then add another math node. This time we're going to change the operation to something I think is called, you can play around with different operations, but I think what I used in the last in the original tutorial was I think flow, and you just need to play around with the contrast here. And I think what it does is cut off, have a maximum and minimum, value for the colors you have. And this is giving us a very grayish mask. So let's find a different mask here. Let's try sailing, which I think is the opposite of flow. Instead of using power, let's try, actually this is better. Yeah, if you don't have any power value, any other node here, and just use round, or I think flow also would work here. Maybe not. Let's just go with what has worked. I think this is a good mask. You can see we would have the white areas would show concrete, and the black areas would expose the brick walls, and this is a good mask. So I'll leave it there. If you want, you can also add the texture coordinate mapping and play around with the scale, but you will have these issues, tiling issues, if your texture doesn't tile. So I'll just leave this to one, because I think this is a very good texture, and it gives us a lot better exposed parts, and yeah, than other areas. Again, you can always switch out the texture here to see what you get. Again, you can download these materials on from my website. So let's start putting these together. So we have this material, and we have this material, and we have our mask. So there is an easier way to kind of put this all together, but it's not how I did it here. And see, this is way too complicated to kind of to to explain, so I'm going to do it the easier way, because I think this was all not as necessary as I don't think it was necessary to do it this way. So and because we have these as separate materials, I can just copy this concrete shader, paste it here. And let's copy these, Ctrl C, select this, Ctrl V, and see we have that. You can then copy the bricks, Ctrl C, Ctrl V. So if we start previewing this, you can see, if we preview this, you can see we are seeing only the bricks, and if we look at this, we're seeing the concrete. So we just need to bring in our mask, which is here. So for that, we don't even have to copy this texture. We just need to copy only these nodes. I don't need this. Copy this, paste that there. And there is a shader that mixes different shaders. So we can see we have this concrete and we have this brick shader, and we can use another shader called the mix shader, and it can mix the different shaders you have, like how the color RGB mix RGB node works. So this blends different maps. This shader here mixes different shaders in the same way as this does, but the only difference is that this doesn't have the mix, the different modes. It just has a factor input. So this mask is going to be our factor input. So I can connect this to this and preview this node. So right now we don't see anything because we have nothing connected to the different shaders. And just to show you what we are doing exactly here, I will just add two diffuse shaders here. One will be red for the bricks, and one will be blue for the concrete. And if we mix these two, you can see the idea that we're going for. So you know what, I think I'm going to save this shader because it kind of giving me a nice look. So just duplicate this. I'll call this metallic shader. I'll use it in my other tutorials. So metallic shader, I'll use it in other materials, so I won't be needing these for that material, for that shader. So I do need the mask, because I think this can really work well for a rusty metallic surface. I don't need these other parts, so I can delete those. So the red areas are going to be our bricks, and the blue areas are going to be our concrete. So let's preview. This is going to be our concrete, sorry, our bricks, so it can go in the red section, and this here is going to be our concrete, so it can go in the blue section, in the blue color. So now actually you shouldn't be connecting it to the diffuse, because these are shaders, they don't go into the color. They have to go in the different shader inputs. So connect this, now preview this. And you can see we have this. The problem is that I think the how is it called? The bumps are too much for the concrete here. So I can go to the concrete shader, and you can always group these. I think it's Control key. Yeah. So and just rename this into a different. I think you can call this concrete, so that you don't have to look at all the nodes you have in our scene. So let's come in here. We need to reduce the bumps for the concrete, so I'll reduce them quite significantly, something like that. And then maybe bump up the strength of the other materials. You can also increase the let's try playing around with the scale a bit here. I'm not sure what's going on. So where is our, is this, we still have that issue of we still have seams, but I think because we have a mask there, they're not really prominent, and you can always try stretching the texture to get rid of those seams, and maybe you can change the texture coordinate to UV projection, sorry, to object projection, and see the results you get. When you change the object, we need this to be box. And we can increase the blending mode, kind of reduce the seams in different areas. If you want to add more concrete areas, we just go into a mask. I don't like how this node, I don't like grouping nodes, and I don't remember how you ungroup them. I think it's, let me try out G. It doesn't work, but if you want to increase areas, to have more areas with concrete, you can increase the scale here, play around with the scale, but again you will run into that issue with seams. So let's try again changing the projection mapping here to box. And yes, I think the when you blend this, it looks a bit better. But you see a clear line here for the concrete. So you can always play around with different textures. You can see, and let's bring this back. So you can also, another thing you can do is we can add another texture, say an image texture like this, and find a different mask. Let's say this here, and just blend it with this image color, mix RGB. So that will give us a completely different mask, and it might also help us get rid of those seams we have. So let's see if we add texture coordinates and play around with the scale and mapping of the object. So see if we have any effect. You can see how it's changing the object a bit. You can always also need to increase. So we need to play around with the blending mode here. So I'll change this to, let's say, overlay. This should give us a completely different mask. Again, you can blend more and more layers using the this blend node, just to see the kind of the results you're getting. You would get, let's preview this just to see the final thing. So this is just cutting out other areas. So I think this is not a good material. This would not create a good material, so a good mask. So let me find a different, let me just use this texture here, the same texture that we used, because we wanted to kind of remove some of the seams we're seeing there. Let's try a different blending mode. Now let's see the final here. Okay, so there are quite a lot of ways you can play around with this. Maybe change this back to UV mapping, and this to flat. Let me switch these around. I think this image here is not working, so let's find a different one. Let's try this. Let's try a different blending mode. And see. And if we preview the final results, this is what we are getting. So let's look at this. This should be using the same material as this, so I'll link the different materials. It needs to be unwrapped, so I'll unwrap it, and if we go in here, you can see how our tunnel is looking. Now what you're left with is just to add some lighting, and you should be good to go. So for the lighting, it was very easy. I didn't do anything that complicated. I just let me see, where is my light? Also don't need this sun. You can see how it starts. I just added two lights, one light on each side of the wall, and duplicated them using Alt D along the length of the tunnel. If you use Alt D, that means you can change one light and it will affect all the other lights in your scene, and I think that's the best way to do it. So now we can see that the light is a bit too much, so I can just go to select one light and change its value, and I should change the value of all the other lights. You can even change I think I wasn't using Alt D. So what you can do if you didn't use Alt D, you can select all the lights, Shift G, select by type, and then Control L to link object data, and that should link all the lights to one light. And then now if we change this, you can see it's affecting all the other lights. Another thing I did to the lights is that I went under constant distance, enabled that, and changed the distance to played around with the distance, so that I can have some unlit areas within my tunnel, because I think that gives it a more interesting look. And you can also add in the environment lighting, an HDRI image. So yes, environment texture, and then find the image you want to use. Just use anything here, but that will brighten up the entire scene. So you can come in here to the strength and reduce that quite a bit until you get something you like. I think this is not as reflective as we want it to be, so I will increase the reflection. Also don't like how these are repeating in around. So yeah, I think this is the final part of our training series, because I think I've covered almost everything that we did. I already did a tutorial on how to make this water, so I won't be repeating that. You can find it in the YouTube playlists on my YouTube channel. So we did everything here, and you can use the same technique that we did to make this brick texture, to make this concrete, to make these metallic rusted metal texture. You can actually use the material that I just did here, that I did previously here. I think this here, you can use this as a starting point. Maybe let me show you how you could use that. So since we already have a mask, let me go this. We can add the principal BSDF, but it takes color, and we only have shaders here, so I'll just add a color mix RGB. Select these, change these to, and this should be our mask or our factor. Connect this, and we don't need the mix shader, so I'll delete this. Let me small shade this. So if we have that, we can add an image texture, a rust image texture, to the red areas. So where is our rust? Do I have any rust here? I think this would be a good rust. So I can feed this into the red area. You can see that that would be our rust, but it's a bit, the texture is too big, so I will scale the mapping down a bit, something like that. And I will also turn this into a metal object. Then I don't want the paint to be metallic, so I'll use again the mask to show Blender where what parts should be metallic and what parts should not be. So you can see the paint is not metallic, but the rust is metallic. And I also need this to go into our normal map, so I'll add a vector bump map. Now you can see this is too much, so something like that. But I want the rust to have more, to be more rough than the paint. So for that I can, let me see, what can I do? I think I can use a color mix RGB, and I use our mask, which is, I think, this. Will that work? Yeah, it will. So I'll just connect these two like that, which will basically give us exactly the same texture. But then if I want to be more, to have more, to be more kind of, let me see, what do I need here? I want to be more dark, and the other to be less dark, but they all need to be black and white. So I'll add a color ramp here and a color ramp here. Okay, where have I connected this color ramp for this here? This doesn't need to be connected there. So I think I have these a bit mixed up, so let me see what's going on. Okay, so yeah, I think that's it. But now if I want to make the paint a little bit more, so if I want the paint to be more darker, I just play around with the contrast, and I think I can use this in the roughness map. Make the paint to be more reflective than the than the rust. So I connect this. I can connect this to the roughness and produce these results here. This result. So if I want this to be more if I want the paint, the rust to be less refractive, so less reflective, I just make this a bit more bright, like that, something like that. But to control the bump amount, let me get this. I think, let me see. We can still use this, but if we play around with these factors, they're going to cause the roughness also to change. So I'll just copy these two so that they are separate from the reflection map. So then connect this back like this, and then connect this to our height map. So if I want the height map to be more bumpy, I think I can, where is this? I think, let me make sure that I have our mask as the factor here. So let me change this to black and see if this is affecting our, so you can see how this is changing the amount of bump we have just in the rust. So I want it to be as bumpy as that, but for the paint, I think I can make it a little bit less bumpy. And also you can see how it's also controlling the areas that are bumpy. But if you want to reduce the overall bumpiness of those areas, you just make this, I think, a bit whiter or a bit more grayish, so something like that. I think this is actually better than the material I had in the original version. And again, you can change the color you want here to whatever you want. And I also want to have some control over the color of the rust. So for that, I will add another color, mix RGB here, and change this to overlay. And now I can change the rust color to whatever I want here. So this can be a bit dark gray, and I don't want it to be as I don't want it to be shiny as that, so I'll reduce the reflection. So yeah, that's how you make a metallic shader like that. So again, you can come in and play around with the, let me see how this looks on the original, in the original project here. So I'll paste it here. I want it to be applied to these, to the pipes. So let me link them. Ctrl L, materials. I think it looks better. Yeah, so that's how you do that. And so this concludes our texturing our tutorial series. If you want the project files for this, you find them on my Patreon page. If you want the materials that I use, you'll find them on my website. All the links will be in the description, and thank you for watching.